My grandfather passed me the envelope under the table between the mashed potatoes and the dinner rolls. Nobody saw it. Not my father, who was arguing with my uncle about the Giants' offensive line. Not my mother, who was trying to stop Holden from launching peas at the ceiling with his spoon. Not Sloane, who was helping my grandmother clear plates. The whole family was loud and alive and distracted, the way families are on a Saturday night when the food is hot and the opinions are hotter. And in the middle of all that noise, my grandfather leaned toward me and pressed a thick envelope into my hand under the tablecloth with fingers that were trembling. Franklin Prescott's fingers did not tremble. This was a man who had worked with his hands for 60 years. He'd soldered copper pipe in crawl spaces at 20 below, threaded gas lines through attics hot enough to cook you alive, rebuilt plumbing in buildings that should have been condemned. His hands were the steadiest things about him. In 34 years, I had never seen them shake. "Don't open this here," he said. His voice was so low I barely heard it under the dishes and the laughter. "Grandpa, what?" "Go home. Pack a bag." He leaned closer. He smelled like Old Spice, pipe tobacco, and lava soap. Familiar smells. Safe smells. But under all of it was something I had never smelled on him before. Cold sweat. "They're watching," he said. "You have 24 hours. Then he sat back, picked up his coffee, and told my grandmother her pot roast could raise the dead. The table laughed. Dinner kept moving. And I sat there with that envelope in my lap and my grandfather's words drilling into my skull. "They're watching. You have 24 hours. When I looked at him, he was smiling, joking, being Frankie Prescott, retired plumber, builder of crooked birdhouses, teller of bad jokes. But when his eyes found mine across the table, I saw something I had never seen there before. Fear. I put the envelope in my jacket. I finished my pie. I hugged my grandmother, shook my father's hand, kissed my mother, scooped Holden off the living room carpet where he'd fallen asleep next to the dog, and walked out to the car with Sloane beside me and my grandfather's secret burning against my chest like a coal. The drive from Bridgeport to Ridgefield is 35 minutes on a good night. That night it felt like 1,000. "You're quiet," Sloane said. She had one hand resting on my thigh the way she always did on the drive home. "Sloane notices everything. It's one of the reasons I married her." "Just tired," I said. "You're not tired. What did your grandfather say to you?" "When we get home." "Tell me now." "When we get home, Sloane. Please." She looked at me for a long second, then at Holden sleeping in the back seat with his stuffed bear under his chin. "Okay," she said. "When we get home." We pulled into our driveway at 7:04 p.m. I carried Holden upstairs, laid him in his crib, and stood there for a second watching him sleep. 3 years old. 27 pounds. The entire weight of my world compressed into one small body. Then I went downstairs. Sloane was already at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of water and that straight-backed look she gets when she's bracing for something real. "Show me," she said. I opened the envelope. Inside was a 6-page handwritten letter in my grandfather's block print. A small brass key. A black USB drive with no label. And a business card. Agent Renata Marsh. Federal Bureau of Investigation. New Haven Field Office. FBI. I picked up the letter and read it out loud. It said that in 1968, when my grandfather was 23 and working as a plumber's apprentice, he'd been sent to fix a busted water heater at a social club in Bridgeport owned by a man named Victor Garibaldi. In the basement, he found a hidden room behind a false wall. Cash. Ledgers. Documents. Enough for even a young plumber to know he'd walked into something illegal. When he left, 2 federal agents were waiting outside. They had been watching the club for months. They knew he'd seen the room. And they gave him a choice: cooperate, or be charged as an accessory to money laundering. So he cooperated. For 15 years, from 1968 to 1983, Franklin Prescott worked as a confidential FBI informant. His plumbing business became perfect cover because plumbers go everywhere. Basements, utility rooms, back corridors, behind walls. People stop seeing you when you carry a toolbox. He reported to an agent named Clive Redmond. He listened. He watched. He wrote everything down. In 1983, the FBI moved. 14 members of the Garibaldi organization were arrested. Victor Garibaldi went to prison for life. My grandfather got a commendation he could never show anyone, a pension supplement he could never explain, and a promise that his identity would stay sealed forever. It stayed sealed for 41 years. Then a journalist filed a FOIA request. Most of the files were redacted. One batch wasn't redacted enough. A true crime article mentioned a Bridgeport tradesman who had been the primary informant in the Garibaldi case. Victor Garibaldi's son, Dominic, saw it. He had spent 17 years trying to identify the man who destroyed his family. That article gave him the last piece he needed. Clive Redmond still had contacts in the bureau. 3 days earlier, he had called my grandfather and told him Dominic Garibaldi Jr. had identified him and sent people to Connecticut. Then came the part that made Sloan go pale. The brass key opened a safety deposit box at First National Bank on Main Street in Bridgeport. Inside, according to the letter, was $385,000 in cash. A lifetime of plumbing money and FBI pension supplement, saved for exactly this kind of emergency. The USB drive held digital copies of Clive Redmond's original handler reports. And the FBI business card was for the agent already waiting for my call. Call her, Sloan said. It's after 7 on a Saturday. Your grandfather said she's expecting you. Call her. So I did. She picked up on the second ring. This is Marsh. My name is Wade Prescott. I'm Franklin Prescott's grandson. Mr. Prescott, she said, calm as a person discussing weather, I've been expecting your call. She confirmed everything. Dominic Garibaldi Jr. had people in Connecticut. 2 known associates had already been seen in Bridgeport. They believed surveillance was underway on my grandfather, possibly my parents, and possibly me. What do we do? I asked. Tonight, stay in your home. Keep the lights normal. Don't pack visibly. We're sending agents to your area within the hour. Tomorrow morning at 7, my team will transport you, your wife, and your son to a secure location. Your grandfather will be moved separately. Your parents will be briefed and relocated. How long? Until we neutralize the threat. I hung up, and Sloan was already moving. Quietly, efficiently, packing Holden's diapers, clothes, blanket, stuffed bear. The kind of movement people make when fear has to wait because there's work to do. I called my grandfather. He answered on the first ring. You opened it, he said. Yeah. Silence sat between us for a second. Heavy silence. 56 years of it. I'm sorry, Wade. Don't be sorry. Tell me the rest. So he did. He told me about being 23 and scared out of his mind. About walking into the wrong basement at the right time. About Clive Redmond meeting him in a diner once a week while my grandmother thought he was out handling emergency plumbing calls. About spending 15 years invisible in rooms where dangerous men forgot plumbers had ears. Were you scared? I asked. Every single day, he said. Scared when I drove to work. Scared when I came home. Scared when I kissed your grandmother goodnight. But what else was I supposed to do? I was just a plumber. I couldn't arrest anybody. All I could do was fix what I could. And sitting there at my kitchen table, listening to this 79-year-old man tell me about the life he'd hidden inside the life I knew, I felt something I didn't expect. Not shock. Not anger. Pride. Grandpa, I said, you're not just a plumber. Sure I am. You're a hero. He got quiet. Don't call me that, he said finally. Heroes do things because they're brave. I did it because I was in the wrong basement and a man in a suit told me it was the right thing to do. That's what makes it heroic. I think he was crying, but Franklin Prescott had never cried in front of anyone in his life, and he wasn't about to start over the phone. Take care of that boy, he said. Take care of Sloane. I'll see you on the other side of this. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Sloane. We sat in the living room with the lights on, suitcases by the door, Holden's bag packed for a week. The USB drive was in my laptop, and I read the scanned handler reports one after another. Source observed cash delivery. Source reported meeting between V. Garibaldi and unidentified male. Source observed increased warehouse activity consistent with distribution. Source. That's what they called him. Not Franklin. Not Frankie. Source. For 15 years my grandfather had been reduced to a function on paper, while carrying the full human weight of that secret alone. At 2:14 a.m., a dark sedan drove slowly past our house. No headlights. No visible plates. It reached the end of the street, turned around, and came back. I texted Agent Marsh. Dark sedan just passed house twice. Her reply came 11 seconds later. We see it. Stay inside. At 6:47 the next morning, 2 black SUVs rolled into our driveway. Agent Renata Marsh stepped out of the first one wearing a navy blazer and the kind of expression that makes scared people feel like maybe panic can wait. Mr. Prescott, she said, we're ready to move. Sloane came down holding Holden, still half asleep, bear dangling from one hand. Are we going on a trip, Daddy? He asked. Yeah, buddy. A little trip. Is Grandpa Frankie coming? He'll meet us there. Good. He said he'd teach me to build a birdhouse. We were in the SUVs 4 minutes later. Agents swept the house, collected the USB drive and the envelope contents, and drove us north. The safe house was a farmhouse outside Northampton, Massachusetts. White clapboard. Red barn. 40 acres of fields and silence. Franklin arrived later that afternoon carrying a duffel bag and his old red Craftsman toolbox. I don't know why he brought it. Maybe because it was the most honest thing he owned. Holden ran to him. Grandpa Frankie, are we at the birdhouse place? Not exactly, buddy, he said, scooping him up, but I brought my tools. We'll figure something out. That night, after Holden was asleep, my grandfather and I sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and the buzz of an old overhead light. Your father knows now, he said. He's angry. Not at the danger. At the secret. Did Grandma ever know? He shook his head. Not one word in 51 years of marriage. How did you keep that from her? By being a plumber. Plumbers work odd hours. Plumbers get called out at night. Plumbers go places nobody questions. Then he said the truest thing I heard that week. That's the part they don't tell you about being an informant. It's not the danger that gets to you. It's the lying. Looking at the woman you love every day and knowing the life she thinks is real is sitting on top of something she can't see. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. It was still the same hand. Thin skin. Scars. Calluses. The hand that had fixed 10,000 pipes and taught me how to hammer a nail straight. You did the right thing, I said. He looked down into his coffee. Maybe, he said. 43 hours after we arrived, the FBI moved on Dominic Garibaldi Jr. Simultaneous raids. His Queens home. His construction company offices. The 2 men doing surveillance in Connecticut were arrested at a motel near Milford. In their room, agents found photographs of my grandfather's house, my parents' house, and my house. Addresses. Schedules. License plates. They were ready to move. They didn't get the chance. Dominic was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, extortion, and money laundering. The old handler reports on that USB drive, combined with current surveillance, gave federal prosecutors exactly what they needed. 7 months later, he went to trial and was convicted on every count. 22 years federal. The two associates got 12 each. The judge called it what it was, a planned assassination targeting a civilian family. We went home 11 days after we left. The Cape Cod on Silver Spring Road looked exactly the same. Lawn too long. Mail piled up. Holden's plastic tricycle still on the porch. But I wasn't the same. 9 months have passed now. It's July 2025. I'm back at Ridgefield High teaching kids how to use lathes and table saws and hand planes. Back to sawdust and machinery and that particular joy of watching a 16-year-old realize he can make something real with his own hands. Franklin comes to dinner every Sunday in his 2004 F-150 carrying some recipe of Dorothy's he has absolutely failed to master. The man cannot cook to save his life, but he tries, and we eat whatever he brings because that's what family does. He's different now. Not more dramatic. Not transformed. Just lighter. The weight of 56 years isn't sitting on one pair of shoulders anymore. My father came around slowly, the way accountants do. One long conversation in December. 4 hours. The two of them ended up sitting silently in Franklin's garage afterward, which is how Prescott men apparently process forgiveness. Sloane handled the whole thing the way she handles everything. By facing what's in front of her and refusing to waste strength on what she can't change. During that week in the farmhouse, I asked her if she was afraid. She said, no. Why not? Because I know who you are. I know who your grandfather is. And the people trying to hurt us are going to prison, while the people protecting us are in this kitchen. That was enough for her. Holden barely remembers any of it. Mostly he remembers what he calls the birdhouse place, because Franklin did teach him to build one during those 11 days. It's lopsided and paint-splattered and hanging from the oak tree in our backyard now. It will never hold a bird. It is the most beautiful thing I own. Last week, one of my students was fighting a lathe, getting more frustrated by the minute, convinced the wood was the problem. I walked over and said, my grandfather taught me something. He said the most important thing about working with your hands isn't what you build. It's what you fix. Anybody can build something new. It takes real skill to fix what's broken. The kid looked at me and said, what does that have to do with this stupid lathe? I said, you're fighting the wood. Stop forcing it. Work with the grain. Let it tell you where it wants to go. He slowed down. The wood turned clean. The shape emerged. And just like that, I was back in my grandfather's garage 30 years ago, learning the same lesson from the same kind of hands. I'm sitting on my porch right now while I tell you this. The birdhouse is swinging in the July breeze. Inside, Holden is building something out of Legos. Sloane is making soup. And my phone just lit up with a text from Franklin. Coming Sunday. Made meatloaf. Don't laugh. I won't laugh. I'll eat the meatloaf. I'll watch my grandfather play with my son. And I'll know something most people never get to know about the quiet man at the end of the table. The one with the calloused hands. The bad jokes. The crooked birdhouses. The bravest person I have ever known is just a plumber. So let me ask you something. If someone you loved handed you an envelope and said you had 24 hours, would you open it immediately, or would you wait? Would you trust them without question, or demand answers first? And have you ever found out that someone in your family had a whole other life hidden under the one you knew? Not because they wanted distance, but because they were carrying something dangerous so you never had to. If you have, then you know that feeling. The ground shifts. Everything solid turns out to have depth underneath it. And when the shock wears off, what's left is something almost impossible to describe. The knowledge that someone loved you enough to carry a weight that would have crushed most people, silently, for decades, just so you could live without it. That's what my grandfather did. For 56 years. For all of us. If this story reached you, let me know in the comments. I read every one. And if there's a quiet person in your life, a plumber, a teacher, a janitor, whoever, someone who might be carrying more than anyone knows, share this with them. I'll see you in the next one.